I'm watching The Substance. This is an esoteric decode of the film The Substance. If you're not familiar with my work, I look at film and television and news events from an esoteric perspective to show you what is hidden beneath the surface, to tell you the one story of our universe. The reason I want to watch this is because it's about finding a better version of you. And at the moment, law of assumption is a hot topic, especially in the awakened community. And it's important because this is following in a toxic example going through the 3D. As with anything, there's negatives, positives, but the idea of living your best life, being your best self, is very popular at the moment, but it's also part of the ascension process. The ascension process, you're trying to be your authentic self, and that is also tied to your best self. So the problem comes in, however, when you're trying to be something that you're not. When you're trying to be a different version of you that you think you ought to be based off of what society tells you that you should be, and you're not being authentic or true to yourself. So that's why I wanted to explore this film. So the movie is about this woman named Elizabeth Sparkle. She is a famous and highly successful actress as well as an aerobics instructor. She's played by Demi Moore, who in reality is 60 years old, but in the movie she's 50, and she's celebrating her 50th birthday. When her job is on the line, her boss, Dennis Quaid, is talking about how he doesn't understand how she made it this far because she's so old. However, she looks fabulous. She looks fantastic. She's in great shape, and she doesn't have any issues in keeping up in doing her aerobics. And she's had a car accident, which has led her to the doctor's office that has given her a USB intro into using this substance. So we're about to embark on this adventure. I can't seem to get the subtitles activated. So what they're saying is, you are the matrix. Everything is you, and everything comes from you, and the substance just brings out a better version of you. So they're setting up the rules for how the substance works, and you have to have 1 week with one version of yourself, obviously the original version, and another week with the new version of yourself. And they say it's a perfect balance because everything must be maintained in a perfect balance in this world of duality. So they also say you are one. You can't escape from yourself. Also true. So no matter what, in law of assumption, when we're talking about becoming a better version of ourselves or moving into a parallel universe in which you are a different version of you, the version that has the thing that you want, you're still you. You can't escape yourself. And a lot of times, if people are looking to have a better life or a different life, or they want to have a different version of themselves, or they want something in their life, they're looking externally for fulfillment. And a lot of times people want to be a different person instead of celebrating the person that they are and making the most of the person that they are, which is authenticity. So what Hollywood does is make us want to be someone other than who we are, because we look at the celebrities and how they have perfect bodies and perfect faces, and some of them are enhanced from chemical or surgical procedures, but we still look at them with admiration because they are on the big screen and they're super famous and have all the money, and when you have that stature, you get everything. And so this godlike nature is what we aspire to be or have, and we feel that we fall short if we aren't like that. So this is where all of this comes from, which is fundamentally what this movie is all about. Seeking the fountain of youth and needing to have the perfect body, the perfect face, perfectly youthful, and constantly feeding that beast, not ever being free of it. They're reminding you that no matter what, you are still one. Even if you become a better version of you, that other version of you is still within you. So if through law of assumption, you try to aspire to be a better version of you, you shouldn't hate or despise or resent the other version of you, the one you're leaving behind, because then you're pushing against it. You should embrace it and accept that that is also part of you. It's one of the many variations of you that you can be. So far, this show is kind of like a dream. It's very insular in the sense that it surrounds Elizabeth Sparkle and doesn't really veer off much from her perspective and what's happening with her. So it's a very small focus, which enhances the dreamlike atmosphere. And as they say in this film, you are the Matrix. Everything comes from you. Everything is you. So it's emphasizing that Matrix quality as well as the dreamlike quality. Elizabeth has gone through the transformation and birthed new self. So this is new self, and she's standing in front of the window, which is like God's eye over the world, like the fishbowl, the screen of reality, the window on the world. So new Elizabeth calls herself Sue, and she has auditioned for her own job because they're replacing her, but they haven't actually said to Elizabeth that she's fired. And so they've hired Sue to replace Elizabeth, and she's looking outside her window at her own reflection on the billboard that says new show coming soon. So she has adopted new self, and her new show is now going to start, her new story. So when you become new self, you are in a new story or a parallel universe. Sue has a dragon on the back of her robe, so she's coming into her serpent power. The Kundalini has risen. In her studio, the hallway is red and the bathrooms are red, so it's like she's in the lower world, the red world. And the man who is her boss, he's kind of like the Joker. He's very comedic and over the top. Awful, disgusting. Dennis Quaid is just, he's fantastic, but it's just gross. You could also see this as your higher self being separated from your human self or your lower self. So the two versions of you being divided. And this division takes place in Elizabeth's bathroom. It's the home of the divine feminine, the bathroom, the ladies' room. So obviously Sue and Elizabeth live in the same apartment, but Sue has to pretend that she's a different person, a different tenant. And Sue has started to take over Elizabeth's life and her apartment, and now she's created a hole in the wall so she can stash Elizabeth's body for the 7 days that she is alive. They're living in the red world, which is patriarchal world, ruled by the toxic masculine. And this guy is Sue's neighbor or Elizabeth's neighbor, and he's upset because she's renovating the house, and he comes over angry, pounding on the door, haven't slept in 3 days. And then Sue opens the door, and he's unable to form a sentence. He's so taken with her because she's so hot. But Elizabeth is hot as well. She's just older. So I don't really understand this sudden switch in behavior just because she's 30 years younger. However, throughout the whole movie, the obvious patriarchy is just palpable. Dennis Quaid being the worst of the worst and so blatantly obvious about it. When the men audition Sue, they objectify the women, talk about their breasts and their measurements and how their body has to be in all the right places. So the patriarchy is raw. It's disgusting. It's over the top. And it's on purpose because we have to be made aware of how bad it is here in terms of the toxic masculine so that we can get rid of it and return to the divine masculine. I'm going to point this out too because it's all over this movie. The camera seems to favor the butt. Some of the shots in this film are quite extreme, I'll just put it that way. And kind of shocking that they would even go there and that the actors would allow it to go there. I think that sometimes they ask too much of actors, and this is one example of that. Sometimes it seems like some of these films are borderline corn. I understand the point they're trying to make is that they're sexualizing the women, but also the focus on the butt. There's a scene where Dennis Quaid is talking to Sue when they first hire her, and his mouth forms a circle, makes it look like a butthole because he is a butthole. There's also a lot of nudity and massive objectification of women, but it's kind of the point. The toxic masculinity has objectified women and reduced them to sex objects to the point where it's so bad that women don't even want to be themselves anymore, even though this beautiful woman, still in great shape, successful, people love her show, but this disgusting, awful, gross man who runs the show doesn't want her around because she's too old, even though he's older than her, and he's disgusting and she's refined and beautiful. It makes women feel that they're not good enough and constantly want to be younger, constantly be fixated and obsessed with being younger and not feeling good about themselves, to the point where they are full of self-loathing. Dennis Quaid plays the boss, and he is in charge of the show. He's running the show. He is the ego, the false god. He has all these TV screens in his office because he's watching everything. He's the observer. So the role of the ego is supposed to be the observer, but he's controlling everything. So he's toxic because he thinks he's in charge. He thinks he's God. He's really not. But this is why everything is toxic and everything's out of control. It seems like as well that these two women have separated consciousness, not just separated bodies, because the way in which Sue behaves is different from the way in which Elizabeth behaves. And we haven't really seen a whole lot about what's going on with either woman to determine whether they're the same consciousness or two different consciousness, but it's starting to appear like they're two different consciousness. Sue is already trying to hide Elizabeth and get her out of the way. She doesn't want to be associated with her. She's trying to take over, and she just doesn't want Elizabeth to be there anymore. So I don't know if Elizabeth is aware of this, but this self-loathing, and this is why I was saying earlier, you can't hate your former self, because this backlash, the polarity backlash, is going to come back and bite you in the butt. Pun intended. There are several symbols of ascension here. The photograph of Elizabeth with the one eye shows that she's opened her pineal, and then they're in the bathroom, which represents the matrix, the IXXI pattern, the cube, the black and white checkerboard, but also she's drilled a hole in the wall in the bathroom. So if you remember from the Matrix, there's a hole in the wall behind the bathroom, and she drags her through the door into the hole in the wall on the other side of the wall in the bathroom, which defines the separation between the two selves. Sue puts on this outfit that looks like snake skin. So there's a lot of serpent references, which is interesting. So Elizabeth goes to pick up her most recent package, her refills for this process, and she runs into the man who gave her the information about the substance, only he's in his older form, so she doesn't recognize him at first. He wanted to know how things were going with her, because I'm guessing at the stage when he gave her the information, things were going well, but at this stage, things are not going so well, and the new version of him is starting to eat at him. So he asks her, has it happened to you yet? Is she eating away at you? She goes home and immediately calls this guy she ran into who she used to go to school with. And oddly enough, before she took the substance, she was turned off by him, but now she is welcoming of his flattery because it's all she can get. And she's starting to sort of die because she's not participating in life anymore. So she calls up this guy and arranges to meet him for drinks, but then she catches sight of the other version of her, the younger version, and it starts to eat away at her. She gets insecure. She starts to get into self-loathing and takes off her makeup and doesn't like her clothing and starts to put on more foundation. So she's letting it get to her because she doesn't like older version of herself. This is really hard to watch. The way she's attacking her face like this is very painful to watch. I'm sure a lot of people have gone through a period of self-loathing, especially in their youth, when they're trying to figure out who they are or fit in, or maybe they're going through a period of internal struggle, depression, anxiety, anything like that, where you're just trying to figure out who you are and how you fit in. And then, it's possible to go through it again as you age and you get older and you're like, well, what is this body that I'm in? I don't recognize it. This isn't what I'm used to. So it's entirely relatable. It's just so painful to watch somebody hate themselves so much and actually physically attack themselves like this. On the flip side, it's beneficial because it highlights how important it is to find self-love. Older Elizabeth is suffering from the vanity and fun that younger Sue is having in this job. She's getting famous and she's making the most of it. Meanwhile, she's sucking the life out of Elizabeth, and Elizabeth is getting resentful now because even if she stops the process, the aging process is irreversible, so she can't stop. I don't know why she can't stop. It's like, I guess part of it is that she needs Sue to make money to sustain her lifestyle, but I think it's more that she's addicted to the attention and the love because her fixation on they will love you, she wants that love. And it's not even real love, it's not true love, and it's not self-love. But she's also addicted to youth and beauty and fame and money. But I think the biggest thing is that she needs this to feel fulfilled. She's addicted to the job. Even in the end, when she tries to terminate, she can't do it because she needs this to feel fulfilled. She needs the follow through. This is the only thing that she has in her life. She's single. She doesn't seem to have any friends. She doesn't seem to have anything. And so this is what she needs to feel that she's actually accomplished something. It's kind of messed up. Right now, Elizabeth is angry and she looks like a witch. And while she's cooking, she's watching Sue on television being interviewed by a late night talk show host. This situation is looking very much like Snow White and the evil queen. And the evil queen is looking in the mirror, seeing her younger self and getting angry and jealous. It's like magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest one of all? Obviously, it's her younger self, Sue. And she can't be Sue, but she also can't separate herself from Sue because she is Sue. And so she's angry about it and bitter. Sue killed Elizabeth after Elizabeth tried to terminate Sue because she couldn't take it anymore. There's an interesting twist. I won't spoil it for you. But anyway, so now Sue is falling apart. And she just ran home from her special evening where she was supposed to announce like the New Year's Eve party. And she ran home and she put the activator in her system. So the activator births a new person. So here we've got the symbolism for the phoenix in her birthing a new person. So death and rebirth. So she went through the phoenix process. And this is, I guess, some kind of reunification process because now we've got Monstro Eliza Sue, which is a hybrid of the two of them merged together. It's disgusting, but kind of funny at the same time. This movie's something else, I gotta say. I don't like horror films, and I've had to cover my eyes a few times, but I'm glad I watched it because it really is something unique and viscerally disturbing in a good way. It's a very simple film, actually. Very little dialogue. I can't say it's like anything I've ever watched before, which is a high compliment to the filmmaker. It's very artistic, and I actually really like this movie for many reasons. But at the same time, it's quite disturbing and gross. But okay, yeah, I don't know what to say. Okay, I think this movie is a must-watch for any woman. You will never, ever feel insecure about your looks again. This movie will scare the shit out of you. Oh, the absurdity. It's hilarious in a lot of ways. It's also scary as hell. Oh my god. So Alyssa Sue goes to the performance for the New Year's Eve celebration, and she had her face covered up with a poster of Elizabeth, and then the poster fell and her true face was revealed. So she's hideous and she's falling apart. The whole thing is kind of Cinderella-ish. She's coming in this beautiful ball gown as Sue and then falls apart and has to transform. The two are merged, and she goes back to the performance and she appears as her merged self in true deformity, which is kind of like what happens after the clock strikes midnight, which is why this event is happening on New Year's Eve. Because when the clock strikes midnight, you enter into a new world. Janice, the two-faced door, going through the portal into the new year, the new show, the new story. So she shows up as her merged self. Everyone finds her hideous because the spell is worn off. Just like in Cinderella, when the clock strikes 12, the spell wears off and she's back to Cinderella. She's not, her beautiful princess self. So everyone's freaking out because she's hideous and she's trying to tell everybody that it's her. Everybody is panicking and freaking out because she's revealed her true self, which is hideous. And people want to hurt her and kill her because they're scared. In this moment, somebody beheaded her and she's spraying the audience with blood. So what we're looking at here is highly symbolic. Alyssa Sue is in her blue dress. So the blue is the divine feminine. She's merged her higher self and her lower self together, although it's in a toxic form, so it's deformed. And she's in the red zone, or the red world, so everything's red, but she's also bleeding all over everything, so she's painting the town red. But she's the blue dot in the red world. So the red world is full of toxic masculinity, and this is her toxic self basically purging all of this toxicity onto the masculine. This is what you've made me, basically, is what she's saying. You made me into this. Even Dennis Quaid's character, he says, this is my greatest creation. I made this. I made her. And he's right. He made her because of the mental torment and abuse he's hurled on this beautiful woman and reduced her to a sex object. He made her go through this process just to survive. So this is just the divine feminine rising in its toxic form, purging the toxicity all over the toxic masculine, the patriarchy, which is why it looks like this, the blue dot within the red. So she's suddenly in the red corridor with her other self on this end and her merged self on the other end. And the red corridor is like the connector between worlds. So this is a tough one. It's so difficult to talk about something that makes me feel physically ill. I mean, I said that women should watch this, but this part, even though it's kind of like comedic and not realistic violence, I can't tolerate this sort of thing. So it's very difficult for me to take this. Okay, I'll continue. I have to give Demi Moore credit for doing this film because, my God, this film, I mean, she looks fantastic when she's Demi Moore. When she's playing the hag, she is hilarious. She is giving it her all. This is a very powerful performance from Demi Moore, and I don't usually talk about the performances. It's not what I do, but Demi Moore has always had a reputation for being a very talented actress. She's not just a pretty face, but her roles lately have dried up. I don't know why. I mean, she's a very talented actress, and even for her age, which is these days, plenty of women in their senior years still act and still have great roles. I'm kind of shocked that she picked this film to be in because she's Demi Moore. She could have picked something. She could have picked anything else, anything. But she picked this. And I think that she picked it because of the statement that it makes, but also because of the range she gets to play in this film. I don't think there is a character in any other film that would parallel this character. And to go from stunning beauty, successful celebrity to literally peeling your face off the sidewalk. Somebody please give Demi Moore an award for this performance. She deserves it. I don't care what award it is, as long as it's not a Razzie. She deserves an award for this performance. This is probably one of the most outstanding performances by an actress ever. It's just, honestly, she gives it everything. This is a weird movie. This is a very weird movie. The movie ends where it began. In the beginning of the film, they were laying her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And as with every story, the beginning is the end is the beginning. She was chasing fame and it led to her destruction. However, it also tells us that we are stars. We come from the stars. And she's lying on the sidewalk, literally on her star, looking up at the stars. The grotesque version of her merged self is also her authentic self. She feels disgusting. She feels gross. She feels she just wants to be herself. And even in that grotesque form, she puts on the dress. She shows up to the event. She tells people, it's me, it's me. So she doesn't deny this version of her. In a sense, it's liberating for her. Because now she doesn't have to conform to any beauty standards. She doesn't have to conform to anything anybody puts upon her because all her ugliness is on display. And the reaction to that, oh my God, how dare you show us who you really are? How dare you be authentic? We want you to be this perfect, pretty person that we created. We want you to put up appearances. How dare you show us this hideous, awful creature? And in a sense, the authentic version of herself that appears in the hybrid hideousness is kind of a projection. It's a projection of the toxic masculine world in how they view authenticity, in how they view the divine feminine, because it's been suppressed, it's been warped and distorted to serve the masculine's needs. And if you show your true self, that goes against the rules of this ego-controlled world, which is why when they cut off her head and she kind of looks like Medusa, she starts to spray the audience with blood because they all have blood on their hands. They all are contributing to the destruction of this woman and the destruction of themselves. So this entire world is drenched in blood, drenched in sin, because they're so absorbed in the image and they don't want to cope with the blood, which is the authentic self, the true essence of you. So in the end of this film, it may appear as if she failed. It may appear as if she destroyed herself. And in the 3D sense, she did. However, in the end of this film, she found true liberation in being her authentic self. She found true liberation in accomplishing what she set out to do, which was actually to be her authentic self. Because in the beginning, she had this empire. She was top of the world, but it was false. It was built off of being a false version of herself. So she had to birth this new version of herself that was palatable to the world, the younger version of herself. However, she ended up hating that version. She hated both versions. She hated herself and she hated the other version she birthed. And yet, in her destruction, in destroying the image, she ultimately found her true self. She embraced the hideousness, which sounds kind of like the opposite of what you would want, but in embracing her hideousness, she found her inner beauty. And the inner beauty is the authenticity, is the authentic self. This is why when she crawls onto her star and merges with her star, she recognizes that she has accomplished what she set out to do, which was to be her authentic self, to be free. So she's liberated herself, which is why she's on the 5-pointed star. She's returned home. So when she looks up to the sky and she sees the 3 palm trees, the 3 palm trees represent the Ein Sof, the upper triangle in the Kabbalah tree of life. This is why the stars fall down on her, because she has merged her earthly self with her divine self. Because it's one and the same. Like they were saying, you are the matrix. Everything comes from you. Everything is you. You are one. So there is no other. You are the stars. Well, that was a strange film. I hope you enjoyed this video. I would love to hear what you extracted from this film. This is how I view this film from an esoteric perspective. Thanks for watching.